Imagine a dog, broken and bleeding, left for dead on the side of a lonely road. Cars speed by. People glance, then look away. No one stops. No one cares. But then, a tiny, impossible hero changes everything. This is the story of Pawprints Forever, a tale of a baby's crawl, a dog's second chance, and a love that sparked a movement. You won't believe what happens next. Before we begin the story, we request you to be a part of the Pawprints Forever family. Subscribe to our channel for inspiring stories. Your support helps us tell more stories like this. The midday sun beat down on a narrow, dusty country road just outside a sleepy rural town in Georgia. Cars sped past, tires kicking up clouds of dry dirt, drivers focused on their errands, music, or endless to-do lists. No one noticed the dog lying at the side of the road. At least, no one who could do anything about it. The dog had been there since morning. His fur was matted and dust-caked, once golden but now dulled by grime and blood. One of his hind legs stuck out at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. A deep gash across his shoulder still oozed slowly. His breathing was shallow, each rise and fall of his chest a struggle. Occasionally, a twitch would ripple through his muscles as he tried to rise, but pain pinned him down. He had been hit, most likely hours ago. The vehicle hadn't stopped. A few people had noticed, of course, some slowing down to glance, others looking away, uncomfortable and unsure of what to do. One driver even took a photo from the safety of his car, perhaps planning to post it online. But no one had gotten out. No one had helped. The dog, a young golden retriever mix no more than 2 years old, didn't have the strength to bark or cry anymore. His eyes had gone from panic to resignation. He lay there in silence, waiting, for death, for a miracle, for anything. And then, something unbelievable happened. A soft gurgle, a giggle. Tiny hands padded through the grass. Not a grown-up, not an adult. A baby. Earlier that day, inside a modest house set back behind a patch of woods just off the road, 29-year-old Rachel Givens was preparing lunch in her kitchen. Her 9-month-old son, Noah, sat nearby on a blanket with his toys, babbling happily. Rachel hummed as she diced carrots, the smell of chicken simmering on the stove filling the air. It had been a long, lonely year for Rachel. She'd moved to the area during her final trimester after her husband, Ben, was deployed overseas with the Air Force. Their little rental home was quiet, far from family and most friends, but surrounded by nature and space. She was grateful for the peace, though the isolation could be difficult with a baby. Rachel turned to check on Noah, expecting to see him gnawing on a rubber giraffe, but he wasn't on the blanket. Her heart skipped. "Noah?" she called out, moving quickly to the living room. The front door stood slightly ajar. Rachel froze for a beat, then bolted outside, barefoot. Her eyes darted across the yard, the long grass swaying gently. And there, crawling determinedly toward the edge of their property, was Noah. His chubby hands and knees pressed into the dirt, diaper sagging slightly, sun hat askew. He moved with an unusual sense of purpose, straight toward the roadside. And not far from where the yard met the gravel, the dog. Rachel's heart dropped. "Noah!" she shouted, racing across the lawn. She scooped him up just as he reached the edge of the road, her breath catching in her throat. But then she saw what he'd been crawling toward, and gasped. There it was, the injured dog, panting heavily, eyes glassy and dull. Rachel turned in a slow, horrified circle, looking for any sign that someone had stopped, helped, called a vet. Nothing. She looked down at Noah, who reached a tiny hand out in the dog's direction. "Duh," he said softly. It might have been his first word. "Dog." Rachel hesitated for only a second. She laid Noah gently back onto the blanket in the shade with a toy and a bottle, then grabbed her phone and called the nearest vet clinic she could find on Google. It was 15 minutes away. The woman on the line sounded uncertain. "We don't usually send staff out," she said, "but you can bring him in if you're able." Rachel glanced back at the dog. "I'll figure it out." She ran to the shed behind the house, grabbed an old beach towel and a plastic storage bin, then returned to the roadside. The dog flinched as she approached, a weak growl escaping his throat. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "I'm here. I'm going to help you." She moved slowly, wrapping the towel around him as gently as she could. He yelped, then went limp. The smell of blood and dust filled her nose. Rachel lifted him into the bin, struggling under his weight, and placed it carefully in the back seat of her SUV. Noah, safely strapped into his car seat, watched quietly. As Rachel drove toward the vet, one hand on the wheel and the other gently resting on the bin behind her, she murmured to both of them, "You saw him, Noah. Nobody else did. But you did. You saved his life." The baby cooed. The dog whimpered. The journey was just beginning. The veterinary clinic sat nestled between a small hardware store and a run-down pizza place on the edge of town. Its faded sign read, "Willow Creek Animal Hospital," and though the outside looked unassuming, inside was a different world, quiet, clean, and brimming with quiet competence. As Rachel pulled into the gravel lot, the tires of her SUV crunched beneath her. She parked crookedly and rushed out of the car, carefully opening the back door where the dog lay in the storage bin. He didn't move much, his breathing shallow, but his eyes flickered open at her voice. Noah babbled softly from his car seat, waving his hands. "I know, buddy," Rachel said, as she unbuckled him quickly and held him against her hip. "We're going to help him." The front door of the clinic jingled as she pushed through. The receptionist, a grey-haired woman with glasses and a surprisingly calming voice, looked up. "Are you the one who called about the roadside dog?" "Yes," Rachel said, her voice cracking. "He's in my car. He's hurt bad." "Dr. Finley's ready. Bring him in through the side door, just around back. I'll open it for you." Rachel nodded and ran. By the time she got to the rear of the building with Noah on her hip and the bin gripped tightly in her arms, the door swung open. A tall man in his mid-30s, with kind eyes and rolled-up sleeves, met her with a gurney. "I'm Dr. Finley," he said. "Let's get him inside." With practiced hands, he helped Rachel transfer the injured dog from the bin onto the padded table. The dog whimpered weakly, his legs trembling. "Do you know his name?" the doctor asked. Rachel shook her head. "No, I just found him. My baby did, actually. Crawled right to him like he knew." Dr. Finley raised an eyebrow, but didn't question it. "Then we'll give him a name for now. How about Buddy?" Rachel smiled faintly. "Buddy's good." Dr. Finley began a rapid assessment. He checked Buddy's pulse, reflexes, pupils. He spoke to his assistant in quick, efficient commands: X-rays, fluids, sedatives, splinting. Rachel stood off to the side with Noah resting against her chest, both of them silent. "He's lucky," the vet finally said. "Broken leg, deep shoulder laceration, internal bruising, but nothing we can't treat. It'll take time. A few surgeries. But he's a fighter." Relief crashed over Rachel like a wave. She kissed Noah's forehead. You really did save him? Dr. Finley looked up. You said your baby crawled to him. Right to him. I didn't even know the dog was there. He just went, like he knew someone needed help. The vet nodded slowly, glancing at Noah, who was now reaching toward Buddy, cooing softly. Sometimes, he said, kids sense things the rest of us miss. Rachel stayed at the clinic for over an hour, filling out paperwork, answering questions, and waiting while Buddy was stabilized. When she finally left, Noah was asleep in her arms, and her heart was still thudding with the rush of adrenaline and emotion. Back home, the silence of the house felt deafening. Rachel placed Noah in his crib and sank onto the couch, staring at the empty towel still sitting in the bin. The image of Buddy's glassy eyes haunted her. Why had no one else stopped? She picked up her phone and opened her town's Facebook group. To whoever hit the golden retriever on Millridge Road and left him for dead, shame on you. He's alive. Barely. My baby crawled out to him this morning. He's at Willow Creek Animal Hospital now. He deserves better. We all do. She posted it without thinking, just needed it out of her. Then she shut off the phone, curled on the couch, and cried. That night, a call came from the clinic. Rachel? It's Dr. Finley? Her heart stuttered. Is Buddy okay? He's stable. Surgery went well. The leg was tricky, but he responded to sedation better than we expected. He'll need weeks of recovery, but he's going to make it. Rachel smiled through tears. That's the best news I've heard in a long time. The doctor paused. We'll keep him here for a few days, but after that, we'll need to find a place for him to recover, somewhere quiet, safe, preferably someone he already trusts. Rachel blinked. Are you asking if I can take him? I'm saying he responded to you, and your little boy. If you're open to it, I'll waive the foster care fee. We'll handle all the medical costs. But he needs a home to heal in, and I think he's already chosen one. Rachel barely slept that night. She stared at the ceiling, Noah curled up beside her, and thought of Buddy lying in a sterile cage at the clinic. Broken, but healing. Scared, maybe, but alive. She'd only meant to help him survive. But now, she wasn't sure she could let him go. 3 days later, Rachel pulled into the parking lot of Willow Creek Animal Hospital once again. This time she brought a blanket, a leash, and a heart full of nervous anticipation. She had cleaned the back seat of her SUV, laid out soft towels, and baby-proofed the living room just in case Buddy needed space away from Noah. It was strange, how quickly she'd gone from a passerby to a caretaker. But something about Buddy had pulled at her deeper instincts, the ones that had guided her through pregnancy and into motherhood. Inside the clinic, Dr. Finley greeted her with a reassuring smile. He's slow but alert, he said, still groggy from pain meds, but when we say your name, his ears perk up. I think he knows who you are. Rachel followed him down the hallway, her footsteps echoing on the polished floors. She wasn't sure what to expect. When they reached the recovery room, Buddy lay stretched out on a padded mat, bandaged and fragile but awake. His eyes locked on her instantly. There was no growl, no flinch, just recognition. Rachel dropped to her knees, tears already welling. "Hey, sweet boy," she whispered. Buddy let out a soft, raspy sound, part whimper, part sigh, and inched his head toward her. His tail gave one slow wag. Dr. Finley watched silently. "I think you've got yourself a foster dog." The ride home was quiet. Buddy lay in the back seat with his head resting on the blanket, every so often glancing toward the front, like he wanted to make sure Rachel was still there. Noah, in his car seat, babbled softly. Rachel glanced at them in the rear-view mirror and whispered, "We're a strange little family now, huh?" When they got home, Rachel opened the side door and helped Buddy out carefully. He hobbled slowly on 3 legs, the 4th still bandaged tightly. She guided him to a soft bed she had placed by the living room window, where sunbeams stretched across the floor like golden threads. Buddy collapsed onto the bed with a tired grunt and didn't move for several minutes. Rachel sat on the floor beside him, gently stroking his fur. He winced once, but didn't pull away. Noah crawled toward them and sat just inches away, staring with wide, curious eyes. Rachel tensed, ready to intercept, but Buddy lifted his head and sniffed the baby's tiny foot. Then, to Rachel's shock, he gently rested his chin near Noah's legs. Noah giggled. It was the start of something neither of them could possibly understand yet. Over the next week, Buddy settled into the house like he'd always belonged. He was cautious, especially around loud sounds and sudden movements, but incredibly gentle. His body still needed healing, but his heart was already attaching itself to Rachel and Noah like it had been waiting for them all along. Rachel followed the vet's instructions closely: pain meds, wound cleanings, short-assisted walks in the backyard. She even started cooking plain chicken and rice to supplement his meals, watching with a smile as his appetite slowly returned. Buddy followed her from room to room, never demanding attention, just needing to be near. And Noah? He seemed to intuitively know when to sit still, when to talk softly, and when to simply lie beside Buddy and babble nonsense that somehow felt meaningful. At night, Rachel often found them curled up together on the rug, Noah's head resting against Buddy's side, both breathing in tandem. It brought tears to her eyes every time. One night, Rachel snapped a photo and posted it to her Facebook with a simple caption: "The dog no one stopped for has found his reason to keep going." The photo went viral overnight. People from all over commented with tears, heart emojis, and offers to donate or send supplies. Someone even mailed a handcrafted leather collar engraved with the words, "Rescued by Love." Rachel had no idea her post would reach so far. She was just telling the truth. A week later, Rachel received a call from a local reporter. "We saw your post," the woman said. "We'd love to do a feature story, not just about Buddy, but about your baby and the connection they share." Rachel hesitated. "I didn't do anything special. It was Noah who crawled to him." "And that's what makes it beautiful," the reporter said. Rachel agreed, unsure but open. The story aired 2 days later. Baby saves abandoned dog, a bond that's melting hearts nationwide. It showed clips of Rachel holding Noah while Buddy limped beside them. The footage of the baby reaching out to rest his hand on Buddy's head made people cry across the country. Offers flooded in. Adoption inquiries, letters of support, donations to the clinic. But most surprising of all, a letter came in from overseas, from Ben. Rachel hadn't heard from her husband in nearly 3 weeks. Communication was spotty, and his deployment had taken him to an undisclosed location. But the letter, written in Ben's familiar scrawl, was emotional and raw. "I saw the story. My whole unit did. The guys teared up watching Noah with that dog. Rach, I don't even have the words. You saved that dog's life. You and our boy. You're incredible." He ended the letter with a line that made Rachel cry so hard she had to sit down. "I may be far away, but I've never been prouder of the family waiting for me back home." That night, Rachel curled up on the couch with Noah asleep on her chest and Buddy stretched beside them. She whispered into the dark, "We were supposed to save him, but I think he's saving us too." The morning light filtered through gauzy curtains, spilling warmth across the living room floor. Buddy stirred on his bed beneath the window, blinking slowly as the warmth reached his healing joints. A soft sigh left his mouth as he stretched, carefully, cautiously. His leg, still wrapped in a fresh bandage, twitched as if testing the limits of recovery. Across the room, Rachel sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee, watching the interaction between her son and the dog, who had unexpectedly become family. Noah was perched beside Buddy, babbling a mix of nonsense and near words, clutching a well-worn teething ring in one hand, while the other rested on Buddy's side. It had become their morning ritual. Every day, Noah crawled to Buddy the moment he woke up, before toys, before food, before cartoons, and every day Buddy greeted him with a soft nuzzle, accepting the child's affection with quiet grace. Rachel took a photo. She had hundreds already, but she didn't want to forget a single second of this miracle she was watching unfold. Later that afternoon, Dr. Finley visited for a follow-up house call. He had insisted on doing in-home checkups to minimize Buddy's stress during recovery. As he entered the house, Buddy limped over to greet him, tail wagging gently. "Well, look at you," the vet said, kneeling to check the bandages. "Someone's making great progress." Rachel smiled, holding Noah in her arms. "He's stronger every day, and his appetite is back. He even barked yesterday when the mailman came." Dr. Finley chuckled. "That's a good sign. Means he's starting to feel at home." After examining the healing leg and checking for infection around the stitches, Dr. Finley gave a satisfied nod. "You've done well, both of you." Rachel hesitated before speaking. "I was wondering, when it's time, could I officially adopt him?" The vet looked up, his eyes crinkling warmly. "He already thinks he's yours." The adoption paperwork arrived the next morning, along with a care package from the clinic, food, joint supplements, and a certificate with Buddy's name written in bold calligraphy. Adopted into the Givens family. Rachel cried as she signed the bottom line. She taped the certificate above Buddy's bed, and that evening, when the three of them sat together watching cartoons, she whispered, "You're home now, forever." Weeks passed, and Buddy continued to improve. He gained weight, his coat grew glossier, his limp became less pronounced, and his bond with Noah only deepened. One afternoon, Rachel sat on the front porch, sipping sweet tea, while Noah played on a blanket in the yard. Buddy lounged nearby, soaking in the sun. The neighbour, an older man named Mr. Porter who rarely spoke, approached with a slow, uncertain gait. He had seen the news report, seen the Facebook posts, and now stood awkwardly at the edge of the yard. "That the dog from the road?" he asked, jerking his chin toward Buddy. Rachel nodded. "That's him. His name's Buddy." The man scratched the back of his neck. "I saw him that day. Drove past. Figured someone else would stop." Rachel didn't answer, not out of judgment, but because there was nothing to say. Mr. Porter shifted on his feet. "Anyway, I was wrong. Should have stopped. Glad you did." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a chew toy, a squeaky bone, and tossed it gently onto the porch. "For him," he muttered. "You did good." Then he turned and walked away. Rachel picked up the toy, smiling faintly. "You're changing people, Buddy," she said aloud, "one by one." Buddy looked up from his sunbathing and gave a soft bark, almost as if in agreement. That night, Rachel had a vivid dream. She was standing in the middle of the road, her arms outstretched, shielding Buddy from oncoming traffic. Cars blurred by, indifferent and unseeing, and just when the headlights grew blinding, a small figure appeared beside her. Noah. He stood, not crawled, but stood tall beside the dog, facing the lights. And the cars. They stopped. Rachel woke up breathless, a hand over her heart. It wasn't just about saving a dog anymore. Something bigger was happening, something sacred. The next morning, an envelope arrived. It was from Ben. Enclosed was a photograph. His unit gathered around a small fire, holding up signs that read, "Team Buddy, rescued by a baby. Noah 1, the world 0. On the back, Ben had written, "We needed this story more than you know. We show it to every new guy who joins. That dog's not just healing you. He's healing us, too." Rachel held the photo to her chest and closed her eyes. The ripple effect had begun. Winter crept gently into the Georgia countryside, painting frost on the windows and turning the early morning air crisp. The fields beyond Rachel's home glistened under the soft touch of the season, and the quiet serenity that once felt like isolation now held a sense of peace and purpose. Inside the house, Buddy lay by the fireplace, snoring softly. His head resting on his front paws. The scar across his shoulder had faded to a faint line. His once limping gait was now strong enough for short walks around the yard. Every day, he looked less like a dog who had been broken and more like the loyal companion he was always meant to be. Noah, now nearly 1 year old, had started taking his first wobbly steps, always toward Buddy. Rachel stood at the kitchen island, holding a mug of tea and watching the pair with a full heart. She had no idea how to explain it to someone who hadn't lived it, how a crawling infant had saved a dying dog, and how that dog, in turn, had helped her survive the hardest year of her life. A few days later, Dr. Finley returned for a final post-surgery checkup. "He's officially healed," the vet said, scratching behind Buddy's ears. "Scars are permanent, but he's strong. He's whole." Buddy nuzzled him in appreciation. Rachel beamed. "I never imagined this day when we first drove him here. He never would have made it without you." Rachel looked toward Noah, who was giggling at Buddy as he tried to catch falling snowflakes through the window. "It wasn't just me." Dr. Finley stood, his expression soft. "You thinking about training him?" Rachel tilted her head. "Training him?" "As a therapy dog. I've seen his temperament. He's gentle, calm, and intuitive. That's rare in dogs with trauma histories. But with the right training, he could help others." Rachel hadn't thought of that before. Buddy had been her project, her miracle, her family's unexpected blessing. But now, the idea of him bringing comfort to others stirred something deep inside her. Within weeks, they enrolled in a beginner's therapy dog course held at a nearby training center. The instructor, a firm but kind woman named Tanya, had decades of experience and a soft spot for rescue dogs. "First rule of therapy dogs," Tanya said on day 1, "is they choose the work. You don't make them do it. They show you they're ready." Buddy, with his attentive eyes and relaxed posture, passed the first round of evaluations easily. He remained calm during sudden noises, allowed strangers to approach him without stress, and responded to basic commands. Rachel was amazed. She had never trained a dog in her life, but it seemed Buddy already knew what was needed. Over the following months, Buddy earned his therapy dog certification. He passed with high marks, earning praise for his patience and gentle demeanor. Rachel began bringing him on weekly visits to the local library, where children would sit in a circle and read books aloud to him. Noah's dog, they called him. One little girl, Emma, came every Saturday. She had a speech impediment and rarely spoke in class, but with Buddy beside her, she'd read out loud, pausing to pet his head between sentences. One afternoon, she looked up at Rachel and whispered, "I want to be brave like him." Rachel knelt beside her and smiled. "You already are." Meanwhile, the story of Buddy and Noah continued to ripple outward. A children's author reached out to Rachel, asking to write a picture book based on their story. They titled it, "Noah and the Dog Nobody Saw." It was released the following spring and quickly became a bestseller, embraced by teachers, therapists, and parents across the country. Rachel couldn't believe it. What started as a rescue was becoming a movement. One Saturday, Rachel received a call from a woman named Linda Reynolds, a counselor at a youth trauma center 2 towns over. "I know this is unusual," Linda said, "but I've had 3 kids this week ask about Buddy. They saw him in the book. One boy even said, 'If that dog can get better, maybe I can too.'" Her voice caught. "We were wondering, would you be willing to bring Buddy in for a visit?" Rachel looked down at Buddy, who was lying beside Noah as the toddler built a tower of blocks over his back. The dog didn't even flinch. She smiled. "Absolutely." At the trauma center, the visit was nothing short of life-changing. The children, many of whom had suffered neglect, abuse, or abandonment, were hesitant at first, but Buddy didn't push. He lay down near them and waited. Eventually, one by one, they approached. A young boy named Caleb, barely 10 years old, sat quietly for most of the session until he suddenly whispered, "I used to sleep outside too." He didn't look at Rachel or the counselors. He looked only at Buddy. "And nobody came for me either." Buddy slowly shifted forward and rested his head on Caleb's knee. The boy didn't cry. He just placed his hand on the dog's head and whispered, "But someone came for you, so maybe someone will come for me." Rachel's heart broke and healed in the same moment. That night, as she tucked Noah into bed, Rachel sat quietly beside him and watched his tiny chest rise and fall. Then she looked at Buddy, curled beside the crib like a guardian angel. "You were meant for something more," she whispered. "You weren't just rescued. You were sent." Buddy opened one eye, his tail thumping softly. Rachel smiled. The dog everyone ignored had become a healer. And it all started because a baby crawled through the grass and refused to look away. By spring, the Givens household had become something of a local legend. Teachers spoke of Buddy and Noah in classrooms when teaching about empathy. The library hung their photo on the wall beside a mural that read, "Sometimes the smallest hearts make the biggest difference." And the children's book had reached national acclaim, earning awards and securing a spot on countless school reading lists. But even amid all the public attention, at home, things remained simple and grounded. Rachel still made morning pancakes shaped like bears for Noah, who was now running more than walking, his giggles echoing through the house. Buddy still curled by the fireplace or lay at the foot of Noah's bed at night, ever watchful. And Rachel, she had found her center again. One warm April afternoon, Rachel received a call from an unexpected source. "Mrs. Givens? This is Colonel Lawrence from the United States Air Force." Her breath caught. "Yes?" I believe you're the wife of Sergeant Benjamin Givens. Yes, I am. Ma'am, I've been asked to deliver a message personally. Your husband's unit is rotating home early. He'll be returning in less than 2 weeks. Rachel's knees buckled. She had to sit down. Tears welled up instantly. Ben was coming home. The next 12 days were a blur of excitement and preparation. Rachel cleaned everything in sight, twice. She had Buddy groomed. She bought a small blue shirt for Noah that said, "Daddy's hero, Mummy's heart." Buddy could sense the energy shift. He followed Rachel more closely than usual, and at night he paced the house like he was waiting for something, or someone. On the morning of Ben's return, Rachel dressed Noah carefully, double-checked the camera battery, and loaded everyone into the car. They drove to the base together. The air buzzed with anticipation. Dozens of families clustered near the arrival gate, flags waving, children holding handmade signs. Rachel's heart pounded as the transport doors opened and soldiers began to file out. Then she saw him. Ben. Tall, dusted with desert fatigue, eyes searching, until they locked with hers. He broke into a run. Rachel ran, too, Noah bouncing in her arms. When they met, Ben swept them both into his arms and held them like he'd never let go. Buddy barked once and darted forward, his first full run since the accident. Ben knelt just in time to catch the dog in his arms. "Hey, you," he whispered, choking back emotion. "I've seen your face every day, but you're even better in person." That night, the family curled up on the living room floor, Buddy lying between them like a bridge that had carried them through the longest separation of their lives. Ben listened in awe as Rachel told the full story of Buddy's rescue. "How does a baby crawl out and save a dog?" he asked, still incredulous. Rachel smiled. Maybe it wasn't just Noah saving him. Maybe it was both of them saving each other. A few days later, Ben accompanied Rachel and Buddy on their regular visit to the trauma center. He watched from the corner as Buddy made his rounds. Slow, steady steps, soft eyes, the way he placed his head gently on the lap of a crying teen without ever needing to be told. Ben whispered, "He knows, doesn't he?" Rachel nodded. "Always." Later, one of the counselors approached them. "We've started a program based on Buddy," she said. "A curriculum about trust, connection, and healing through service animals. We call it Crawl Toward the Light." Rachel gasped, tears springing to her eyes. "That's perfect," she whispered. At the next therapy session, Buddy met a boy named Theo. Theo had been through severe trauma and hadn't spoken in months. He refused to make eye contact, flinched at touch, and withdrew from all group activities. But Buddy didn't push. He lay nearby while the group coloured, occasionally shifting his gaze toward Theo, but never getting too close. One day Theo crept closer. He placed a drawing beside Buddy and whispered, "I drew you." The picture was rough, a lopsided golden dog with kind eyes. Buddy nudged it with his nose and gave Theo a quiet lick on the hand. Theo smiled. From that day on, he never missed a session. Meanwhile, the foundation Rachel had unintentionally started began to take real form. Donors reached out. A local business owner offered to sponsor a new therapy dog training space, and a retired school counsellor volunteered to help coordinate a community-wide education campaign called See the Ones Left Behind, dedicated to raising awareness about animal abandonment and child neglect. And it all started with a baby crawling through the grass. One evening, Rachel sat on the porch swing with Ben beside her, Noah asleep in his arms and Buddy at their feet. Do you ever think about that day? She asked. What if Noah hadn't seen him? What if I hadn't looked out the door in time? Ben nodded. I think about it all the time. Rachel looked out at the stars. I think maybe someone bigger than us had a plan. Ben reached down and scratched behind Buddy's ears. Well, whoever that someone is, they sent us an angel, with a limp. They laughed softly. Buddy let out a huff and laid his head across Ben's foot. And in that perfect moment, surrounded by warmth and silence and the heartbeat of everything that mattered, the past faded and the future stretched out like an open road, full of second chances. Summer arrived with long golden evenings and soft winds rustling through the trees that lined the back of the Givens' yard. Rachel found herself pausing more often, soaking in the life they had built, the healing that had unfolded in layers over the past months. Buddy no longer limped. His gait was strong now, powerful even, as he ran through the tall grass with Noah squealing behind him, chubby legs trying to keep up. Ben had set up a small fenced area for them both, complete with a mini obstacle course that Buddy took to like it had always been his playground. And though Buddy still bore scars, both seen and unseen, there was no doubt now. He was whole. One evening, Rachel received a call from Tanya, the head trainer from the therapy program. We've had a request, she said. It's a bit unusual. Rachel straightened in her chair. What kind of request? There's a hospice centre 2 counties over, small place. They specialise in paediatric palliative care. One of their long-term patients saw a video of Buddy and asked if he could meet him. Rachel's chest tightened. What's his name? Oliver. He's 8. The staff says he's declining. This may be his last wish. The answer came without hesitation. We'll go. The hospice centre was quiet and sun-drenched, the kind of place that tried to feel less like a hospital and more like a gentle home. Flowers lined the windowsills. Wind chimes sang softly in the breeze. Nurses moved slowly and spoke in low, loving tones. Oliver lay in a small room overlooking the garden. His skin was pale, his hair thin from treatment, but his eyes lit up when Buddy entered the room. You came, he whispered. Buddy, sensing the fragility in the boy's body, walked slowly, deliberately. He sat beside the bed and rested his head gently on the mattress. Oliver reached out with trembling fingers and touched Buddy's ear. He's just like I imagined, he said. Rachel sat quietly in the corner, tears slipping down her cheeks. For 30 minutes, no one spoke. Buddy lay with Oliver while the boy stroked his fur and told him stories. About the imaginary worlds he created in his head. About the space station he wanted to build. About the way he used to climb trees before his body got sick. Buddy didn't move. He listened. When it was time to go, Oliver held onto Buddy's face and whispered, You're my favourite dream. A week later, Rachel received the call she knew would come, but prayed never would. Oliver had passed away peacefully with his family beside him. In his final moments, he clutched a photo of Buddy, the one Rachel had printed and left with the hospice staff after their visit. His mother later sent Rachel a note. Thank you for giving him joy in his final days. You didn't just bring a dog. You brought peace. Rachel read it aloud to Ben, who wrapped his arms around her as she cried into his shoulder. Buddy seemed to understand. For days after the visit, he was more subdued, quieter. He slept near Noah still and played when prompted, but something in his gaze lingered, like a soul that had carried someone else's pain and was learning to let it go. Rachel watched him one evening as he sat in the yard, staring up at the stars, and somehow she knew he was thinking of Oliver. "I think he gave you something too," she whispered. As the Foundation's reach expanded, Rachel was invited to speak at a national conference for animal-assisted therapy. She brought Buddy with her, of course, and Noah stayed with Ben for the weekend. The conference was held in a bustling city hotel, filled with therapists, trainers, and non-profit leaders. Rachel took the stage nervously, but once she began telling the story, the real story, from that first terrifying moment when she found her baby crawling toward a broken, bleeding dog, everything flowed. "I didn't rescue him," she said near the end of her speech. "My son did. And somehow that dog knew. He was supposed to live. He chose to keep going. And in doing so, he taught us all what healing really looks like." Buddy stood beside her, calm and proud. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted nearly 2 minutes. After the conference, a publisher reached out. "Have you considered writing your own book?" the email read. "A memoir, from your perspective." Rachel had never thought of herself as a writer. But that night, as she watched Ben read Noah and the dog nobody saw aloud to their son, while Buddy lay at their feet, she knew it was time to try. She opened a blank document and typed the first line. It began with silence, then came the crawl. Months passed. The book came together, piece by piece. Stories from the road, letters from strangers, updates on children like Theo and families like Oliver's. She included the highs and the heartbreaks, the small moments that shaped their journey. And through it all, Buddy remained at her side. He was older now, not in years, but in soul. His eyes had seen pain, yes, but they radiated something else too. Peace. Rachel titled the book, Because He Crawled. On the day the manuscript was accepted, she closed her laptop, turned to Buddy, and whispered, "You're not just our dog, you're a movement." He tilted his head and thumped his tail softly against the floor. Rachel smiled. The world had ignored him once. But now? Now it was listening. The launch day for Rachel's memoir, Because He Crawled, arrived on a crisp September morning, painted in soft hues of gold and copper. The publisher had planned a modest online campaign, but by sunrise the book was already climbing the bestseller charts. A combination of word of mouth, loyal followers of Buddy's journey, and heartfelt coverage from local and national media made it a sensation. Rachel sat in her kitchen, coffee mug in hand, as her phone buzzed continuously. Her inbox overflowed with messages from teachers, therapists, dog rescue volunteers, parents of special needs children, and even fellow military spouses who had seen themselves in the pages. Each message carried a thread of the same message. Your story reminded me of something I'd forgotten: hope. The next week, Rachel received an email from a woman named Melissa Chang, a documentary filmmaker from San Francisco. "I read your book and couldn't sleep. I wept, then wrote an outline for a film. I want to tell your story, to bring it to screen. Not just Buddy's, but yours, Ben's, and Noah's. The story of how a baby crawled into the grass and pulled love back into the light." Rachel's hands trembled as she read. Buddy, laying at her feet as usual, lifted his head as if sensing her heart skipping beats. She looked down at him, smiling. "You ready to be famous, Buddy?" Production began that winter. Melissa and her small film crew arrived with cameras, microphones, and notebooks, but they blended in gently, like they understood this wasn't a performance. It was a sacred memory unfolding in real time. They followed Rachel through her daily routine, feeding Noah walking Buddy, answering emails from new readers. They visited the trauma center, where Theo, now confident and chatty, greeted Buddy with a proud, "Hey, old friend." They captured footage of Rachel reading Noah and the Dog Nobody Saw to a classroom of second graders, where one child whispered, "I want to be like Noah when I grow up." They filmed Ben in his uniform, talking about trauma, resilience, and how Buddy helped him reconnect with his family after deployment. They filmed Noah, now talking in full sentences, explaining to the camera, "Buddy's my best friend. He came from the road, but now he's here, with us." But the most powerful moment came during a surprise visit. Melissa had secretly contacted Oliver's mother. She arrived quietly one afternoon, carrying a framed drawing in her arms. Rachel recognized it immediately. Oliver's rough sketch of Buddy, lopsided and lovely, the one he had given him during that quiet visit in the hospice room. "I want this to be part of the film," Oliver's mother said softly. "People need to know how much a dog's presence can matter." She knelt beside Buddy and ran her hand down his back. "He was the last good memory my son had. That matters." Rachel didn't say anything. She just hugged the woman and cried. When the documentary, The Crawl That Changed Everything, premiered 6 months later, it debuted on a major streaming platform and immediately began trending. Viewers left thousands of comments, pouring out stories of their own pain, their own rescues, their own redemptions. More importantly, donations to local rescues surged. Therapy dog training programs across the country reported a spike in applications. Schools began inviting therapy animals into classrooms as part of their mental health programs. Hospitals began pilot projects modeled after the trauma center Buddy visited. It wasn't just a documentary. It was a spark. As spring returned to Georgia, so did a sense of completeness. Rachel, Ben, Noah, and Buddy had grown into a family knit not just by love, but by experience, by sacrifice, and by grace. One morning, Rachel stood on the porch, watching Noah chase butterflies through the garden, while Buddy trotted faithfully at his side. She snapped a photo. Then she opened the Queenie Foundation's social media page, the very page that had once helped share Buddy's story, and posted it with the caption, "He was the dog nobody helped, but thanks to one baby's crawl, he became the reason thousands learned to care again. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They're often carrying miracles." Buddy's health was strong, but age was beginning to creep in. He moved a little slower, slept a little longer, needed a ramp to get into the car now. But he never missed a session at the trauma center. He never ignored a child in distress. And he never left Noah's side. Later that year, the Givens family was invited to speak at a national mental health summit in Washington, D.C. They were the keynote feature. Rachel was nervous, until she walked on stage and saw hundreds of people standing for her family, for a dog who had once lain dying in the dirt. She began with a single sentence. Sometimes healing doesn't begin with a grand gesture. Sometimes it begins with a crawl and the courage to stop and notice. The room was silent. Then someone clapped, then another, then everyone. Rachel looked down at Noah and Buddy sitting at the front of the stage, and she smiled through tears. Because she knew the story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone. Time moved differently now. In the years that followed the viral photo, the therapy sessions, the book, and the documentary, Buddy became more than a dog. He became a symbol of survival, of second chances, of the quiet, soul-saving power of love. The Givens' backyard had grown into a sanctuary of its own, filled with flowers, bird feeders, wind chimes, and laughter. Noah, now 5, raced through the yard in rubber boots, shouting to Buddy with joy in his voice. "Come on, Bud, you're slow today." Buddy followed, a little more careful with his steps, but his tail wagging steadily behind him. His muzzle had turned silvery around the edges. His eyes, though older, still sparkled when Noah was near. And Rachel. She had never felt more alive. Her memoir, Because He Crawled, had become a staple in therapy centres and schools alike. It was even being translated into several languages. She was now often invited to speak at conferences and workshops around the country. But she never stopped being Rachel, just a woman, a mother, and a grateful soul who had once said yes to a moment most people ignored. One evening after dinner, Rachel and Ben sat on the porch while Noah lay curled on a blanket in the grass with Buddy. "He doesn't remember a time without him," Rachel said softly, watching them. Ben nodded. "That's a gift, growing up with that kind of love." Rachel smiled. "You think he'll remember all of this?" Ben looked at her. Maybe not the specifics, but the way it made him feel, that kind of love leaves a mark. They sat in silence, the hum of crickets rising in the dusk, Buddy's soft breath audible even from the porch. Then came the letter. It arrived in a cream-coloured envelope, the handwriting neat and deliberate. It was from a woman named Margaret Hughes, the director of a national children's therapy organisation based in Colorado. She had read Rachel's book, seen the documentary, followed their story from afar. Her proposal was simple and overwhelming. "We'd like to build a retreat centre in Buddy's name, a place where children recovering from trauma can come, spend time in nature, work with animals, and reconnect with hope. We want to call it the Buddy Haven." Rachel's eyes welled with tears before she even reached the end of the letter. She showed it to Ben, who read it quietly, then looked at Buddy napping in the sun. "He deserves that, and so do all the kids like him." Plans moved quickly. Donations came in fast as news spread about the Buddy Haven. A former horse ranch was donated by a retired couple in Colorado. Volunteers signed up from across the country: veterinarians, dog trainers, child psychologists, teachers. And in the heart of it all would be a life-size bronze statue. Buddy, mid-stride, his eyes forward, his body strong, with a plaque that simply read, "Rescued by love, remembered by all." Rachel and her family flew to Colorado for the groundbreaking ceremony. It was surreal. Hundreds gathered under white tents, children held signs with pawprints and hearts, and dozens of dogs, many therapy-trained, lay at their handlers' feet, calm and present. Rachel stood on the small stage with Noah and Ben beside her. Buddy lay at her feet, his grey muzzle resting on her shoe. She spoke with her hand gently stroking his fur. "I used to think you had to be brave to make a difference. But now I know. It only takes a moment of kindness. It only takes someone who notices what others don't. My baby crawled to a dog no one else would help, and that moment became a movement." Applause erupted, and then, as if orchestrated by the universe, Buddy stood and barked, just once. A sound full of life, of pride, of acknowledgement. Noah laughed and threw his arms around him. Back home. The days became slower. Buddy slept more, walked less. He still waited by the window when Rachel left, still followed Noah into his room at bedtime, still looked at Ben with quiet loyalty that needed no words. But Rachel could feel it. The shift, the subtle goodbye. One morning, Buddy didn't get up with Noah. He didn't lift his head when the birds chirped or when the mail truck rattled past. Rachel knelt beside him. His breathing was calm, shallow, peaceful. She laid her head next to his and whispered, "You did it, Bud. You changed the world." Buddy's eyes flickered open just for a second. And then he let go. The house was never the same. The silence after Buddy's passing wasn't just absence, it was reverence. Rachel wrapped his collar around the base of a candle on the mantel. Noah drew pictures of him almost every day, and Ben, quietly and without words, built a small garden in the backyard, planting a single apple tree and placing a stone beneath it that read, "Buddy." He waited. We came. He stayed. That winter, Rachel received one final letter. It was from a little boy named Jordan, who had stayed at the Buddy Haven after losing both his parents in a car accident. "I didn't want to be alive anymore. But then I met this dog named Rocket, who looked just like Buddy. And Rocket let me cry into his fur until the sadness didn't feel so heavy. I think Buddy sent him. Thank you for not letting him be forgotten." Rachel held the letter to her chest and wept. Because even though Buddy was gone, his heart was still crawling into the broken places of the world. Spring returned with quiet grace. The apple tree in Buddy's garden blossomed for the first time, delicate white petals clinging to its young branches, swaying softly in the wind like little flags of remembrance. Rachel stood beside it in the early morning, coffee in hand, and touched the bark as though she could feel his heartbeat there. It had been nearly a year since Buddy passed. A year of healing, a year of legacy, a year of learning to live without the daily rhythm of paws padding across the floor, of soft sighs beside the fireplace, of silent loyalty that needed no translation. But it had also been a year of expansion. The Buddy Haven had opened its doors to dozens of children in its first season, each one arriving scared, hurting, uncertain, and each one leaving a little lighter thanks to the dogs, the fresh air, and the magic that Buddy had set in motion. Rachel visited regularly, sometimes bringing Noah, now 6 and growing fast. He loved showing new children how to brush the therapy dogs, how to sit quietly and let the animals come to them. He would tell them proudly, "My dog started all of this," and they believed him, because it was true. One Saturday afternoon, Rachel hosted a small backyard gathering, a mix of old friends, new supporters, therapy staff, and neighbours. They lit candles and told stories, placing photos of Buddy across the garden fence like a gallery of his finest moments. Noah stood beside a hand-painted wooden sign nailed to the tree. "This is where Buddy rests, but he still hears you." Children took turns placing drawings of dogs and hearts around the stone at the tree's base. One girl brought a flower crown and placed it on the tip of the statue carved in Buddy's likeness, a gift from the trauma centre where he had once helped Theo. Rachel stood at the centre, looking at the faces of those Buddy had touched. She cleared her throat and spoke. "We think love is something we give, but sometimes it's something that saves us first. Buddy didn't just change our lives. He became the reminder that we are all worth saving, no matter how broken we begin." There were tears, smiles, hugs. And there was laughter, because Buddy would have liked that best. That summer, Rachel published a follow-up to her memoir. It wasn't about her, or Noah, or even Buddy directly. It was about the children who had come after him, the ones who were helped by his story, healed by his legacy, changed by his memory. She titled it, "The Ones Who Heard Him." It opened with a single dedication. For everyone who saw what others ignored, and for the child in all of us who still believes in second chances. Years passed. Noah turned 10, then 12. He still kept a framed photo of Buddy beside his bed, and every year on the day they found him, what Rachel now called Rescue Day, they planted something new in the garden. The tree had grown tall by then, and beneath its shade bloomed a patch of sunflowers, each one stretching for the light. Rachel sometimes caught herself looking toward the road, the place where it had all started, not with bitterness, but with wonder. Because what began as a tragic oversight by the world became the spark that lit 1,000 kindnesses. On the 15th anniversary of the Buddy Haven, a national news outlet produced a special documentary segment. They interviewed dozens of people, former patients, counsellors, authors, dog trainers, veterans. They visited the apple tree, the trauma centre, the reading room, the hospice, where Oliver had once smiled. And finally they sat down with Rachel, now older, her hair kissed with grey, her voice steady and clear. The interviewer asked, "Do you think Buddy knew what he was doing? That he'd change lives?" Rachel smiled and looked into the camera. He didn't have to know. He just had to be loved. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. The final shot of the documentary faded into footage of a baby crawling through grass toward a wounded dog, followed by a world that finally had learned to stop and care. Join us at Pawprints Forever. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of rescue and redemption. Follow our journey on social media, share Buddy's story, and consider donating to the Buddy Haven or your local animal rescue. Together, we can make sure no one is ever left behind again, because every paw print leaves a legacy.